The simple Pledge of Allegiance is something that we say on a daily basis in schools all across Nebraska and the nation as well. Although we don't think much of it as we recite it, the pledge can actually be pretty controversial. According to the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, the government protects the right to freedom of religion and freedom of expression from government interference. It prohibits a national religion to be set in place, interference of freedom of speech, and the right to peacefully assemble. The First Amendment keeps the government from making laws that stop us from saying what we believe in. We as citizens have the right to criticize the government and to share our opinions with others. As stated in the Supreme Court case of the West Virginia Board of Education versus Barnett, quote, "The right of freedom of thought and of religion as guaranteed by the Constitution against state action includes both the right to speak freely and the right to not speak at all." The article later goes on to say, quote, "Law is concerned with the external behavior and not the inner life of man." The main controversy around the Pledge of Allegiance to schools is should students be allowed to silently protest by sitting down during the recitation of it. In Nebraska, we have a rule called Rule 10, which covers these rights. In Title 92, Chapter 10 of the Nebraska Administrative Code, quote, "Each public school district shall establish a period of time during the day during which pupils will be led in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance in the presence of a flag of the United States of America in grades kindergarten through 12. Pupil participation in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance shall be voluntary." The key word here is voluntary. We have the right to remain seated. You have the right to petition, and in a letter by Kent Willis to a member of the Virginia State School Board, Willis has been quoted as saying, I like this, "The right to refuse to stand for or recite the Pledge of Allegiance is about as fundamental as it gets in free society. Free speech not only means that government can't suppress your beliefs, but that also it can't compel you to profess a belief that you do not have." The article later goes on to say, "The principal reason for adopting a new policy is that school officials should embrace and support the same constitutional rights they ask educators to teach students." So they should be showing us that when we learn about the First Amendment in history class, when we learn about these amendments, when we learn about the Bill of Rights, that we can actively do those things. We don't have to do that in class, and they are eliminating our right in a particular context without really a compelling reason to do so. The most notable Supreme Court ruling pertaining to this matter is the landmark case of 1943, which is the West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett, which I previously mentioned. The court ruled that students cannot be required to recite the pledge, and that by doing so, this would violate their free speech rights. So Barnett is a Jehovah's Witness who refused to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance of the United States in front of the flag while in a public school. This is because, obviously, like I said, he is Jehovah's Witness, and that is against his religion to be able to worship something other than the God that he believes in. Barnett was actually then later expelled from the school and charged with juvenile delinquency. And right before this event, actually, in 1942, so 1 year before, the state board adopted a rule that forced all teachers and people to the Pledge of Allegiance in front of the nation's flag each day. If the students refused, they would be found insubordinate and expelled from schools. And get this, they would not be readmitted to school until they actually conformed. So until they actually stood up for the pledge and said that they were going to recite the pledge. So in response, Barnett actually asked for an exception for all Jehovah's Witnesses because this pledge goes against their religious belief like I was talking about earlier. This actually was denied an exception in court. So they said that, this is our law, you already are on our side. So, a few more recent freedom of speech cases have been brought to the spotlight on a more state level. So here in Nebraska, in July of this year, in January of this year, 2018, Nebraska State Senator Steve Halloran actually introduced the Higher Education Free Speech Accountability Act bill. So if signed into law, this will protect free speech rights of students at institution of higher education in Nebraska. So recently there was a white supremacist at the campus of UNL. He's a student at UNL, and he posted a video online about him giving his opinion, stating his opinion about white supremacies and obviously being for them. He posted a video online, and it got a lot of attention from other students and even faculty. and a lot of people were saying that he needs to be kicked out of school, he needs to be expelled from school, this is not right, and there was a lot of peaceful, silent protests out in front of the student union, and again, like I said, online. But this bill, if it's actually passed, would really back him up. It would back him up in court and show that, he does have those rights. That even though I do not agree that that is right to put that big of an opinion out there online, which I know many people do, same with news broadcasters, but that he would be backed up in court. So when asked why they sit, many responses are the same. So protesters usually say that they don't agree with the positions of our government and our society. So they don't agree with necessarily that maybe Donald Trump is our president. They don't agree that Hillary Clinton, should have been our president right now. They want to make people aware of why they're actually sitting and not just make a scene. So many say that they sit so that they can educate others about the concerns with our country. They really want to be able to give another point of view, another perspective for people that are pretty close-minded and, and hopefully make them a little bit more open-minded. So yes, I personally do want to see their hands over their heart, but I want to see this happen out of love and not out of hate for our country. Yes, I totally agree with most of the reasons that they are protesting, but we as citizens of this country, respect is huge, and I believe that by doing even the small things such as reciting the pledge, participating in voting for our president, voting for, state electees, that it actually can have a really big impact on our society and how we're doing things in the near future. So if they choose to stand because of conformities, if they choose to stand because, I'm going to stand for the pledge, I'm going to put my hand over my heart and wholeheartedly say the pledge. But if they choose to stand for the pledge because of conformities, because they know that I'm standing, so they have to stand even though they don't believe in it, that actually means nothing. It's just an empty victory in a nation that is torn in a cultural war.